I don't have an interest in death itself. Like I said, my theory, death is 1937. 1937 happened. I wasn't here, and it'll probably be just like that. I don't remember missing anything. I don't remember thinking about anything. I just wasn't here. That's going to happen no matter what I do. It's really, how do I live here and be in less pain?
Hey there, my name is Sean, and this is Suicide Noted. On this podcast, I talk with suicide attempt survivors and ideators so that we can hear their stories. Every year around the world, millions of people try to take their own lives, and we almost never talk about it. We certainly don't talk about it enough. And when we do talk about it, and when we do engage with those in pain or distress or despair, many of us, frankly, most of us, are not very good at it at all. So one of my goals with this podcast is to have more conversations, and hopefully better conversations, with attempt survivors and those in the space between, in large part to help more people in more places hopefully feel a little less shitty and a little less alone. Now, if you are a suicide attempt survivor or ideator and you'd like to talk, please reach out. Our email is hello@suicidenoted.com. I'd love to speak with you. I really would. You can learn more about this podcast in a number of places, including our website, which will be updated very soon with information about this upcoming tour, which I'm very excited about and very grateful. All of the support and the people involved from putting it together, helping me out, promoting it, joining me on stage, are all either past guests or some loyal listeners and others involved. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's going to be really cool. You may have noticed that we are more active on social media. Thank you, Ambient, for your help with that. In particular, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And on YouTube, you can also find live stream conversations. Conversations in small groups with past guests about different topics. So if you want to check that out, I'd love for you to check it out. I think it's unique information, helpful information, and perhaps will be helpful for you. Finally, we are talking about suicide on this podcast, and my guests and I don't typically hold back. In fact, we rarely do, if ever. So please take that into account before you listen or as you listen, but I do hope you listen because there's so much to learn. Today, I'm talking with R once again. Yes, it's an update episode. R lives in California, and she is a suicide attempt survivor. Hey, R.
It's really, really nice. I was anticipating with utter positivity to talk with you again.
Awesome. It's been a while.
It's when did we record?
The episode came out early September 2023. So we probably recorded in, I would guess, summer sometime.
I think this is you were the last person I spoke to on Zoom.
Oh, wow. Did listen to the little blurb that I always put in the beginning of each episode, and yours, I remember, was, and when I listened back, I was like taken immediately back to our conversation about how you felt this loneliness in the bathroom.
I was looking at your list of question ideas, for discussion, and I did listen to my episode.
I remember enjoying our conversation, and I remember you being very open and honest, and I remember that you, in your work, you had a rather unique perspective because you worked with people who were in crisis or despair or distress for many years.
I probably mentioned trying to give something back or trying to be in a helpful career of some sort is a fairly common way that people who struggle try to survive. It's comforting to be around people that speak your language. It feels a lot less judgmental. One of my regrets, I would say, is that, and my definition of mistake is something you did that you wish you hadn't, and a regret is something you didn't do that you wish you had. And I try to focus my life on that. Like if I'm facing a crossroads, is this going to be a mistake or a regret? My first initial training and career was as a therapist. That was just who I am. It was very congruent to who I am. Mm-hmm. And my life took various turns that I got away from that from a career perspective. And even though I continue to volunteer in areas where I could be helpful, people that I went to school with and I know who stayed and became full-time therapists as their primary career, they're the people who call me when they're falling apart. It's very natural, like I said, it's very congruent with who I am, to just go there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the person people go to.
And then you didn't necessarily, well, you didn't reach out to me to have that kind of conversation in that context. But one could say that we kind of flipped the script back in the day with me and you. At least in that I was mostly asking the questions and I was the one who was sort of figuring out what's up with R. I'm going to call you R. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Which is interesting to me. And I appreciate that. This hasn't happened to me. Because chances are it wouldn't, because the person would never reach out in the first place. But I would imagine some therapists or counselors would be not so open. Who are you? Who are you, bald guy? Now, maybe if they were super interested in the podcast, and, eventually you listen enough, you could tell I give a shit, but still might not be your flavor. There are people that don't like that I curse once in a while. Like, sorry, bud. If that's the fish you're trying to fry here, we got different recipes.
Well, I make some assumptions, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but my assumption is that since this is what you're pursuing currently in your life, my assumption is this is very close to you for any set of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's a language that a lot of us have to stay very secretive about. It's not your open conversation. And so for someone like me, it's a giant relief to talk to you because you've opened this giant door of permission.
Mm-hmm. Let us remind the listeners or whomever might hear this, I guess listeners, that the people whose job it is, therapists, counselors, I'll reference them again. There are some other roles in our culture to support and to listen and to whatever that looks like. That doesn't mean they have people to talk to.
Right.
And in fact, the work they do arguably need it.
What a lot of people don't know is that just like any profession, there are good, better, bad, and terrible therapists. It's like people want to hang a sign on them that says that somehow there's more of an assumption that they're going to be kind, compassionate, perceptive, smart, attentive, open, non-judgmental, whatever. You've got all these things you hang on them. And that's just not true. They're like any other person in any other profession. And I know because I was in a master's program with 100 of them, I was appalled that these people were in a profession where they were going to go behind a closed door with a vulnerable person without a witness. And some of them were good, but I came from a learning program where don't you dare go behind a door with a vulnerable person until you've done the work yourself. And I went to school with people who would never consider being in therapy themselves. You can only go as far in yourself as a therapist has been in themselves.
It makes me think sometimes, though I've gotten very little feedback saying this, that maybe even though, Sean, you are pretty good with banter, it seems like your head or your heart's in the right place. I don't know if you are the person based on your way you were educated with respect to this work. Doesn't mean I'm going to stop, but it makes me stop for a moment and think about that. I don't know.
I think in my schooling, and I think this is fairly common, there were people who wanted to do the work themselves, and then I call them, they were ivory tower people. They thought that they were somehow going to train the masses, that anybody who came to them, they were a pillar of wisdom.
Right.
And I don't think wisdom comes if you don't ever look within.
I would say I do once in a while tend to say some rather strong statements. I probably did it when we talked. And I would say most of those people who are in that ivory tower with that perspective or attitude should find a different job.
Yeah. Well, but people are delusional.
If the audience wants to hear our original conversation, are in California, September 4th, 2023. We're not going to repeat that conversation here.
Right.
But they can listen to it if they're curious. And I want to thank you again for reconnecting with me. How have you been?
I have had a life, particularly the last year, where I've had a lot of logistical challenges,
Hmm.
moving, setting up a new household in a new town, and all that comes with that.
Hmm.
And moving at my age, which is a whole other topic I want to talk about. And so I've been so logistically challenged. And because I'm married and my priority in life is the we, not just the I, then I have a lot of responsibilities to create a household together and solve all these logistical problems together. That's a real big part of my life. And also because my husband is not well. And so, I mean, he's pretty good, but he has some medical challenges. So I'm in a position where I have huge responsibilities right now and have been. And it has diverted me. But what I was thinking about in relation to our original interview and something I can bring to this one without reiterating that one that's a little bit different
Sure.
is that I am a chronic, what is the word, ideator. My go to when I'm triggered by trauma, you know, just facing something I feel I can't handle, wanting to end my life is my first choice. That's like an immediate reflex reaction. And that's where I feel different than a lot of people. I don't know people that that's their first choice.
Well, that's interesting because they're out there. You don't know them because we
Well, I
don't
don't know
talk
them.
about it. Who's going to say that to you or anybody?
And then I have to start going backwards into, okay, now I have to consider this, and this because the complications around ending my life are just huge. I have to try to keep breathing. I have to try to be here. I have to hide how bad it is. I can't go to a therapist and talk about it because I'll be hospitalized.
And all of that hiding and not talking, just adds to the problem.
Oh, yeah. Even though I would say, so when a therapist might ask me, are you still thinking of ending your life? I have to say, well, not lately. Do you have a plan? No. Do you have a date? No. But what is never addressed is the reflex of just going there immediately.
May I ask you a question, if I may? When you say the reflex is that's your first go-to, what does that mean? And what does it look or feel like, if that is answerable?
The question, what does it feel like? It is a level of despair
Yeah.
that gathers in the throat that feels like I can't breathe. It's a level of isolation and fear and despair that is profound. And I do think, and you're not asking this, but I'm going to add this.
Please do, yeah.
The word trauma is thrown around all the time now. In fact, it's thrown around so much it's kind of taken the sting out of it. But I had early extreme trauma, and in ways that led me to think that I wasn't supposed to be here, that I was a mistake, and that I was not wanted here and I shouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very early, maybe starting at 4 years old. I have carried myself around all these years where if I'm pushed into a certain kind of trauma, I go to, oh, that's right, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm a mistake. I'm unwantable. I believe, and I probably said this won't talk, if young children, as they're formulating who they are not wanted and adored and celebrated by their parents or a parent, and that's what creates self-esteem, they don't know how to get it later. And that they seek it in the wrong places, or they use drugs and alcohol to get it, or to get away from how it feels not having that. I have literally sat down with supposedly good therapists and said, okay, how do I wake up in the morning and feel like I have a right to be here?
Mm.
How are you going to do that with me? And very often therapists will say, well, yeah, if you didn't get that, you have a life that's a battle all the time, even when things are going well.
Right.
Because things are going well and things are going well. And then a curveball, something happens, boom, or there's a loss, or you have a bad medical test, or you whatever. How do you want to stay here? How do you feel like you have any value?
Okay, so all the external stuff I see and maybe others see seem okay. But there's this feeling of, and I think it is probably there for the great majority of the people who feel this way or attempt. The closest word I can come to is hopelessness.
Mhm.
Is pretty accurate. It's just this feeling of it's not gonna, you don't get it. It's not going to matter. And then and this is just for me, but I'm sure I'm not alone in that. When that really starts to seep in or has kept sept in, that's a weird word. It's been there. That's right. It's such a battle. It doesn't actually matter that someone is right or wrong, so to speak, and that there is no hope. It's if you feel that way
Mhm.
so deeply. And then we get older and we can talk about that a little bit too, because you asked a question about that. I think you're about 70.
I'm 72.
Yeah. That changes things too, because we've
Oh,
just been doing it a lot longer and you got less time on earth. Your body's changing. Maybe your memory, there's just stuff that happens to carbon-based, whatever we are, right?
yeah.
Organic beings. And I just understand why some people check out. I just do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was trying to think about that since I wrote about age. One of your questions was, do I listen to the podcast? And I do listen to the podcast, but I keep looking for people who are older to listen to
Mm-hmm.
because a 20-year-old
Mm-hmm.
or a 28-year-old or a 32-year-old, it's not that I don't validate where they're coming from and who they are and what they're experiencing, because I experienced it
Mm-hmm.
at those ages too. But there was a great quote, and I'm not going to do it justice, but I'm old and I've been young and I know what it's like to be young.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they're young and they know what it's like to be young, but they don't know what it's like to be old.
Cannot know.
They cannot know. I can sit here and say to you, my parents are gone. Just because your parents are gone, you continue to have a relationship with them and it morphs and it changes. And so when somebody 20 is like my mom and mom might be 38, you know, my mom is da 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 da, or, whatever. I'm not judging. I am validating, but I know what it's like to be 20 and look at your 40-year-old parents. And
So to hang on, Art, it speaks to something very important here. Main goal of the podcast from day one, help people feel a little less shitty and a little less alone. That tagline's never going to change. So if you are north of whatever age, there's not a set number, but 60s up, whatever the number is, and you have fewer people. And the main reason, by the way, if you're curious, they just don't reach out to me.
right, I know.
For a number of reasons.
Well, a lot of them are gone.
They're gone. They don't listen to podcasts.
Right.
Whatever it might be.
Right.
They're afraid of Zoom. I don't know. They have fewer people they can hear where they are more likely to connect with or that their stories resonate in part because of age. Certainly some things a 30-year-old might say you can resonate with, but it's not the same as hearing somebody in your age bracket. And I'm sure, other people could say that about being Black or being trans. Sure, being age is part of that too. There's
Just being human.
Yeah.
It's different.
If I hear a middle-aged guy, and maybe race matters, but because I'm white, I'll say a middle-aged white dude talking about being lonely, it hits a little bit different than when you talk about being lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Same, it's just so the point being, you're not getting what you want from this. I understand if that's part of the reason why you're less inclined to listen.
And I also, as I'm older, I feel protective. Like I feel this real compassion, and I feel like I want to sort of put my wings over these callers. Not to convince them to change their mind. I mean, I'm not like, we did talk about the suicide prevention movement. I'm not coming from that place. I'm coming from more of almost a parental protective place. Like when you see a puppy that needs a home and you just, I feel like I've been their age feeling like they feel. And then something else happened to me, and then something else happened to me, and something else happened to me. And somehow I'm this age, and I never thought I'd live this long. I'm not advocating living this long if you don't want to, but I am an example of somebody who's lived with this, that has lived this long. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that I have things to offer.
Yeah.
But I'm not pro or con any choice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not. I've been too deep into it to be pro or con. But I will say, and this is probably the best and worst thing you're going to hear from me. I will say that at the age of 45, my whole life changed in a completely high positive way. And I rode a high for a long time until it hit me that just because my external world had gotten so amazing, my internal world had not changed.
Interesting. And that's almost a curse, isn't it?
Yeah. And so I could recognize, and if people looked at me in my life, it was like, whoa, but I'm still me in here. And so then I'm balancing the perception of me. We talked about this a little bit earlier, the perception of me, of what my life looks like.
Yeah.
And who am I really? And that's a really unpopular thing to put out there, because if you're perceived as having a highly successful life and within yourself, you're not okay, it's not something you talk about unless you have really close, good friends who are going to be with you, with your fame and fortune and without it. I do. I mean, I have some really, really close, good, long-term friends. One in particular that I would talk about this. But one of the things that I do notice about being older is that in my 20s and 30s and teens, if a friend was really in trouble, they're going to call you at 3 a.m. and go, I have to talk. And they may come over and fall apart on your couch. If it was a female friend, he did this, he said this, he didn't do this. And if it's a male friend, it's like, oh my God, she walked out, or whatever. You've got this exchange that somehow has permission in your age group that people are going to show up on your doorstep. I mean, in my 20s and 30s, I had people, show up and stay with me for a month, to try to heal some heartbreak or loss. And as you get older, you don't do that anymore. I don't call my friends at 3 a.m. and go, oh my God, I have to talk. I listen to an audiobook. That connectedness. And in those times, you can talk about being suicidal. You can talk about not being able to stand the pain one more minute. I mean, at least the way I was and the people I knew. Now, again, I grew up in the 60s on the West Coast, and I was in college in Northern California, and I was in the center of all of the, EST and Scientology and learning who you are and massage therapy. I was in the middle of all that. Self-actualization was the status symbol, not who played football, not who was a sorority girl. It was the more you knew yourself and the more you could express that was the status in my world. And I know that's not a typical world, especially people who didn't grow up probably in New York or San Francisco or whatever. At that time and place, there was so much permission to say what was real. It was encouraged. And then I watched in the 80s, I watched the world change. It was all about what you acquired, how much you had, how you looked to the world. Oh my God, when someone said to me in that period of time that I use as little money as possible to look like I have the most money possible. So they can't afford where they live, and they can't afford their car, and they can't afford anything because they have to look like they have everything. Here I go back to aging again. So here I am at this age in this insane time in history, which I was trying to avoid with all my power back in the old days. In my age group, the word is conformity. When you start getting more, it's all your life, but boy, when you start getting over 30, over 40, over 50, over 60, the need to conform, it's like I got married really late in life. And how many staff meetings did I sit in my 20s, 30s, and 40s? And I looked around. I was the only one in the room that wasn't married. Only one in the room that didn't have kids. Then I'm in my 60s and I'm in book groups, and I'm the only one there that's married. But that's easier because those women have been around, and some of them have been married, widowed, or they choose that not to, and it's not as judged. But when you hit, at least in my world, when you hit those ages where conformity is everything, and you've already spent your life being chronically suicidal, which does not conform, and you can't even say anything about it, and then you're an outlier, and then that triggers, I'm not supposed to be here. I didn't do it all right. I didn't follow the plan.
When we talked, how many suicide attempts had you had?
3.
What ages were they?
17, 32.
More or less. You don't have to be exact.
Yeah, like 39.
Okay, so late teens, early 30s, late 30s. So it has been over 30 years, which was the same as it was when we talked, if I had a better memory. So where are you these days?
I'm not planning currently, but going also back to aging, California has the medical assistance in dying. A number of states do. And Switzerland has Dignitas. There are places you could go if you are ill.
Only if you're ill and if it's quote unquote physical.
Right. There are some places that you can go if it's psychological. And I've read about those. That I think there's a place called Pegasus.
Still hard.
Hard.
Really hard. I'm not saying it shouldn't be.
Right. I don't think it should be that hard, personally. But now that I'm now I'm on the edge of your body falls apart or your mind will fall apart. Something's going to go. Okay. The issue for me is suffering. And the reason I think I have the chronic ideation and the reason I answer it that way, plus my aging, I don't want any more suffering. And I don't believe in suffering. And, people, if they want to suffer, I guess they can. But for me, I don't believe in suffering. I don't think it's okay. And I've paid my dues. If I had some kind of intractable illness, I'm done. So in that way, I'm always planning.
Do you remember, I want to ask you a couple of things. What was the experience of hearing that, as best you can recall? Your voice, your ideas, random dude you're talking to?
I was very judgmental. I'm pretty insecure in a lot of ways. And so I was concerned that I talked too slowly and I didn't sound like this or I sounded like that, or is this really what I wanted to say? I was judgy about it. I mean, not entirely, but I tend to go there. I could do it better. I could have been better.
Yeah. Do you remember if you shared it with anybody so they could hear it?
I did not.
That doesn't surprise me for some reason. Because the reason I asked that question in large part is I was wondering what they said. What is it like for somebody to hear you talk about this stuff? Maybe they didn't know some of the things or you talked about it in another way. Who knows? No,
I really appreciate you and what you do. And I thought you were very decent to me. You were attentive. You tracked what I was saying. You followed up. You added to things. You prompted me. I mean, no, I thought you did a really good job.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. There is a couple of questions that I probably didn't ask you. I don't know if I was asking them then. I may have, but it's still worth asking again. One of them is the pink and purple pill question, which you may not know if you don't listen to the podcast much these days. Pink and purple pill, I give it to you. If you take it, you die. You go to sleep, you die. There's no pain and nobody knows it's a suicide. So you're nodding your head and you probably heard it before. Would you take it? Would you save it? Would you throw it out? Whatever, something else?
Oh, I would save it.
Then and now.
Oh, yeah. Between then and now, would I have taken it?
Yeah, that's the question I want to know. Right, yes. Because that brings up some other stuff.
I don't think I would have taken it between then and now, but I'd sure like to have it.
Yeah. As somebody who has spent a large portion of her life talking with people professionally, which is probably much more listening than actually talking, but that's part of it. And someone who has friends from what you've shared, married. How many people do you have in your life where you can talk to about that? And this is kind of think I know the answer, but it's worth asking, that you can talk to in full with no fear of hospitalization against your will. And even no fear of just that, those eye-rolling responses were just wow, I just should have said nothing.
One, my caveat to that answer is that occasionally someone from my life will talk to me about this, not necessarily for them, but I'd say since we talked in the last couple of years, I think I've known 3 people, in fact, one very recently, who lost someone to suicide. And they have called me to talk about it. And then, the door is open.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In that I feel that I can provide perspective on what it was like to feel the need to do that. And that in one case, actually in two cases, that the person talking to me did a really good job with the person they lost, and that they didn't lose them because of how they did or didn't respond.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That it was bigger than their friendship or whatever.
Right.
And so I try to help the person that's in front of me, but I do feel I have a unique perspective. And whether, depending on who is talking to me about it, my friend who I would talk to recently, a very close friend of hers ended his life. She was very, very involved with his life and his people closest to him and all this, and had known him 20 or 30 years. We spent a lot of time talking. And I found myself saying to her, and he was married and his wife was in pieces and she was being helpful. And it's like, I found myself saying to her, there comes a time where the people who loved him are going to need to know that this is just what he needed to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a different perspective than, oh my goodness, why couldn't I stop him?
Oh, this is one of the reasons I think why I feel it's so important to have more real, legitimate, open conversations. And here's why. And I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, I know, but I have people in my life who are suicidal, who are planning. The one person in particular is more of a planner. Very unlikely she's going to go to a bridge tomorrow and go. We talk about it. You know why? How that actually, I hope it helps her. It helps me. Because if and when she chooses to go, I feel, at least in this particular relationship, but I'm sure it would apply to others, I had the conversation. I understand her better. And I would feel, I think it hasn't less, man, I could have done something more. I should have said this. I should have done this, right? Because I get it more now, much more. And so I feel like that's really important. If you don't have the conversations, and I'm not knocking anybody for not having the conversations. I'm not. I would think it's a little bit easier to say, what did I miss? What did I do wrong? What did I say wrong? How did I not see it? You just got to keep talking about it. And we are so not doing that.
Right, right. And I think because the bottom line for what you just said is that it's irreversible. And there's something about remembering that for the person who's going there, that it's irreversible. And when somebody does something irreversible, we want to make sure they are as sure as they can possibly be, if that's where they're going. And it hurts us because it's irreversible.
Well, what it tells me, though, and I remind myself of, is because it's irreversible, people might have different beliefs about that, but let's assume it just tells me how much pain they're in. They know they're going to die. That just tells me it's a level of pain that I probably never experienced. And even if I had, it's, pain is pain, but it's also unique to each person and how they deal with it. And so it just seems really hard for people to sit with it, though.
Well, how many people have said to you, it's not that I crave death, it's that I want an absence of pain?
So many.
Yeah, that's what we're seeking. We're seeking an absence of pain. I don't have an interest in death itself. Like I said, my theory, death is 1937. 1937 happened. I wasn't here. And it'll probably be just like that. I don't remember missing anything. I don't remember thinking about anything. I just wasn't here. And I figure I'm just not here. So that's going to happen no matter what I do. And it's really, how do I live here and be in less pain? And that's what I think people seeking these conversations are asking. And we all day to day find ways to add less pain to our lives in some way. Again, whether it's addiction, whether it's my addiction is books. Reading is my drug of choice.
That's a pretty healthy addiction.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I don't choose it because it's healthy. I choose it because I'm just not a good alcohol and drug person. I don't like to feel sick. It's just not a choice for me because I don't want any more suffering. And to me, alcohol and drugs has an element of suffering to it. And my other great evasion of pain is a great conversation, a real conversation.
Yeah.
That really does it for me.
Books and talking, not bad.
But I'm an outlier.
When you think about your own death and should it come to ending your own life, when you think about that, how specific do you get? And I guess part of that question is around method. I'm curious, and we don't have to include it if you don't want to, but I'd like to. Is that part of the thinking?
Well, the thinking is, how do I do this and not suffer? So as I go through options in my head, I have yet to come up with an option that doesn't involve suffering. I came to a point of feeling pretty done. And shame is certainly not something that would stop me. Suffering would stop me, but shame is not part of that. A pink and purple pill would be nice.
When you received the email that I sent and you chose to say, yeah, an update would be great, why did you want to talk with me again?
I am not going to be talking to anybody else the way I'm going to be talking to you about it. I can't talk to a therapist about it. I've talked a couple times to my one friend, but she's the one who just had this loss. So that kind of brought it a little more front and center in my world. I have a number of acquaintances around me having serious medical problems. So I know that the aspect of aging and not being well is out there. I started wondering, and I haven't had a chance to do the research yet. I wanted to research how chronic ideation is received in the world of psychiatry, psychology, culture, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to look into that. It just hit me how chronic this is for me. I feel like the world that I inhabit would be, well, you got here this long, you're not going to be here that much longer. Why don't you just wait? You're going to die anyway. But again, that doesn't take into account the suffering that when I'm hit with something and it's like it's piling on. That if I suffered at 17 and then I suffered at 35 and then I suffered at 45 and on and on and on, each time is worse. It changes from frantic to exhausting, because I remember my attempt in my early 30s and there was a franticness to it. I got to do this. I got to do it now. I'm done. Now I'm tired.
I'm not laughing at you. It's funny.
I know. You're relating to it. So let me just lay down and be done. I also have changed. I have an amazing life partner. I got lucky later in life. I have an amazing bond and partner. And yeah, I could talk to him about this, but I don't want to add it to other stresses. He'll just worry about me. He's worried about me enough. He knows some of it. In the years that I've been with him, I've learned so much about having a partner. And I had partners before, and this is very different. I treasure that partnership more than anything. And in a lot of ways, he saved my life. I know that's very untraditional and unfeminist, but I'm not saying it in a male-female sense. I'm just saying that somebody coming into my life and going, you are it for me. And somebody of the ethics and caliber and how much I admire him and respect him as a human was like, I was like, who, where, like what? Me? He sees in me the things I wish I could see. I wish I could believe. I have an obligation to that partnership in a way I've never felt toward anybody. And because he has an illness, I'm the person that's going to take care of him. I won't desert him.
It's a reason to live, some might say.
Yeah.
Did I ask you about, did we talk about memoir titles?
Mm-mm.
I know you love books. I just want the title.
Of whose memoir?
Well, who am I talking to?
But you mean everybody you talk to, you're saying has a memoir in them?
Oh, at least one, yeah.
Okay.
And then if you have a memoir, it needs a title, maybe even a subtitle. Now, you might not know this, but I have a gift for helping people come up with memoir titles. In your case, I'm not sure where to go with it. I just feel like it's worth exploring together for at least 30 seconds.
Well, the title that I come up with is that when my life changed so much, so drastically, I pictured a billboard on the freeway that said anything can happen.
Oh, anything? Is there a subtitle? That might be a little harder to come up with right now.
Well, I felt like that, who me? I mean, that could be a title too. It's like, who me? On a lot of levels, who me? I probably have a lot of titles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I kept seeing a billboard that said anything can happen.
Maybe I can add to the question and add not just a memoir title, but a billboard. That's great. Because I feel like with a billboard, people will be a little bit more edgy. Like a memoir title, it's like, you're trying to sell it. It's got to sort of encompass your whole life. A billboard might be just more like, fuck this shit. Just like boom, boom. And that's also part of the truth.
I think of a lot of t-shirts,
Mm-hmm.
where people will say something like, oh, well, the front of the shirt's going to say this and the back of the shirt's going to say this.
God, if you could do that
And
podcast, I would love it. I want to do merch.
yeah, I sort of see the front of the t-shirt, I'm still here, and the back of the t-shirt, are you?
Yeah, there you go. That's a good.
But that kind of because look, I have to make this assumption that people who tend to be suicidal are not riddled with self-esteem, like I was saying before. And so a lot of the statements are kind of that, sort of a quippy in your face, hey, really? Like I wear a t-shirt a lot. I have a black cat, okay? And I wear a t-shirt a lot. I have a picture of the black cat and it says, bite someone for no apparent reason, just bite them. And that's my cat. It cracked me up when I saw that t-shirt. And when I do my walks around the neighborhood, I wear this t-shirt. And if somebody looks at it and they like it, then that tells me a lot of who they are. If they look at it and they think, uh-oh, and then that tells me who they are. Something along those lines. A little bit harsh.
That's actually not a bad memoir title in itself. A little bit harsh.
I haven't, I used to do a lot of writing and I wrote, some autobiographical essays, the beginning of a mystery. And I was in a writing class. I don't know how this got to me. I was wanting to practice writing dialogue and I didn't plan to do it, but I saw someone being home alone and there was a knock on the door. And when they said, who is it? The answer was death. And it was a whole dialogue with death. A few other characters like time. And that was really fun to write.
I bet. I had this idea for a play in which there were 4 people, all had taken their own life. 2 regretted it and 2 did not. And that's about as far as I got. But there's just some space in which they're talking. And I don't know what else. That was just the premise. Because I've always been very curious if we can learn from those, and we probably can't, who died and wish they hadn't ended their lives. I would love to know that percentage, because it could be a very low, but it could be quite high. I just don't know. We'll never probably ever know. And my guess is if you could talk to them, and, we're playing with time and space and reality, of course, I'm sure some of them, if you could, would say, you know what? Nah, I wish I hadn't done it.
I mean, I think that's a wonderful idea. And I think that because of all the conversations that you have, you've got so much material.
Right.
I'm sure that people have, and I've heard have said, well, I tried, I've made these attempts, and people that have made attempts and they're still here, how do they feel about it? I read the book called The Bridge because my memory of the book was it did go into the people that had jumped, and some of them had regretted it, but some of them hadn't. Some of them would, wanted to do it again or were very sorry that they failed.
That's the closest we're probably going to get.
Right.
To knowing that, right? Because we probably can't talk to dead people.
People have tried. I have gone through multiple periods in my life. This was either before the internet or early internet, or I've gone to the library and I've checked out everything on suicide and get my hands on to read it. It's either academic or it's a therapist writing that this is the way not to do that or whatever. I'm trying to remember, and maybe I'm just not remembering if I ever read anything that was more broader, more open-minded. I think we talked about this. There is a website.
Yeah, Sanction Suicide.
Periodically, I go there and I read what people have to say. Again, most of them are very young. Occasionally, somebody over 50 or over 60 has been in there.
They've gotten some shit for that thing.
They're being pursued to be shut down. And there are people that try to ask like some how questions or where do I get this question?
That's one of the problems.
That's the problem. It's so ignorant because everybody knows the options. It's not the option that takes someone's life. It's how they feel. And I don't think that our society, particularly now, is capable of adequately addressing the feelings, like you asked me earlier about how does it feel? the feelings that people have that they don't want to be having, the hopelessness, the despair, the sense of sort of being choked in a way. If the world of psychiatry and psychology and meds and all that isn't going to address that, or it's not effective somehow, then it goes back to Nancy Reagan in the 80s with the drug culture saying, just say no. It's like they're trying to patch it all into a world where you would just say no to them. If you don't address what's causing it, if you can, I'm not even sure you can, or if you don't feel seen and heard, which is very common, which is what you do, which is why what you do is so important. Just feeling seen and heard and not told that you're wrong is huge. I mean, you know that. In essence, you're sort of the stranger doing that.
Bring up an interesting point about there's a benefit for me being kind of a stranger.
Yeah.
It's such a unique, weird little space I'm in.
You don't know me, so you don't have a stereotype of whatever people that know me would have assumptions about me. There is something makes it easier to talk to a stranger. We don't have anybody in common. We don't have any people in common. And I think there's a lot of value in it. I mean, that's why people go to a therapist. They're a stranger. They don't have people in common. If you and I do this once a year, or once every couple of years, or you go to a therapist once a week, they're not there that Friday night at 7:00 when you've been punched in the throat. Then you've got to rely on who's in your world, who's
Totally
your world. And if you don't have that, or you don't have somebody that you can talk to or trust with yourself, with your most vulnerable self, it's like the strangers, you're more aware that they're strangers. They're not there. So it's almost like a process. It's like part of the therapeutic process, if I was still doing this, is teaching people how to bond with people in their lives.
Not my role.
Yeah, it's very difficult. And as well as I know, some people only want strangers in their lives.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All these conversations that you have with a friend or in a therapist's office are just between the two of you. My conversations with you and others, other people hear. There's very few places people talk about it in general. There's also very few places people hear it.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that the podcast is not riddled with listeners, because it's such a safe way to be less alone with this. It's very, very, I mean, you're curled up in a ball on your bed listening. Nobody knows you're listening. It's totally
right.
I have to also accept the fact that, I spent many years in psychology and in school in psychology. And so you tend to be around people who are asking these questions, talking about these things. Your normal conversation is not the normal conversation in an advertising office. And so that's my normal. And I just kept with that. Even when I had work that wasn't work as a therapist, I could sort of suss out who my people were in the workplace and who was capable of layered thought, critical thought.
And you know what I've found? You know it quick.
Yeah.
There's that dance. That's so hard to find.
It's the best. That's why marriages fail.
Yeah.
It's all about communication. Can you have that discussion? Oh, when we talk about this and it goes there and you do this, I get shut down, or whatever. It's hard work. And again, it's easier with people that you're on the same page with. You share an ethical base. You share a mutual attitude toward conversation. Nobody's a monologuist. You want to engage. I had a boyfriend once, and he wanted me to meet his sister, and I met his sister for dinner, and she talked for 2 hours. She never asked a question. And you hit the word. The word is curiosity.
100%.
100%. Are you talking to somebody who, are they curious about you?
But what a great starting point.
30 years ago, I have a very, very close friend who's about 10 years younger than me. And he was finally in his first relationship that was really going to work for him. She was smart. She was attractive. She adored him, kind, decent. Did 1.5 years. This is what he thought he always wanted. And he came to me one day and he said, I have to break up with her. I said, why? And he started going wet and he was reaching and grabbing. And I turned to him and I said, does she make you curious? Have you learned everything there is to know that you're interested in knowing? And he looked at me and he goes, she doesn't make me curious.
But when, just so I understand, ironic, I'm curious right now. When you, a little meta action going on here. When you ask that, you're suggesting that, does she make you curious, like about her or about like life?
About her. Have you learned everything there is to know? Has she showed you all the layers she has in a year and a half? Because in my world, we're infinite. And if you connect with somebody else who has a concept of a mental infinity, you never run out. You never stop being curious. There's always another question.
This is so interesting, man.
But when you meet somebody and within a small period of time, you get the feeling they've shown you everything they have, and then you stop being curious because you've knocked at the door a little bit and they keep showing you the same thing. One of the main reasons my marriage works is we both have infinity. And my friend that I said I can talk to about this, she has it too. I could sit down with my husband or that friend and we would never stop talking. I mean, might get tired and we might need to eat and we want to go read a book, but there is an infinity, just like there's an infinity in the sky and the planets, there's an infinity in our brains. I believe that, but not everybody's in touch with it. We shut ourselves down because we're in pain. We limit ourselves. We put a fence around it, but sometimes you can find somebody that brings the infinity out in you. And it's really fun. We will get into a conversation and then we'll go, okay, there's 4 tangents that just happened. Are we going to remember these tangents or should I write them down? Because in those 2 sentences, you hit 4 tangents. I can say process or I could say creative. You are continuing to create material.
Yeah.
There's more material. You went on 9 trips. If you were to tell me about your 9 trips, I might say, well, what you did here and here, which one did you come home and feel more relieved to be home? Well, then why were you relieved to be home? And where would you go back to and why? And the person that you met on trip number 3 and you stayed so close to them and now you're not, what happened? There's so much more than the content. There's your process. There's your creativity. There's the relationships. There's so much more to learn about because, Scotland's green and pretty with nice rolling hills and the accents are really hard to understand. But what does that tell me about you? Nothing.
It is not that common for me to not have much to say or ask about. And that is a sign that there's a problem.
Think.
And I can't put my finger on it. It's just like not there.
You're reminding me of, I reconnected with an old friend. And the reason we reconnected is that he and I knew each other in college and we would just sit up all night and talk about everything in the world. We were just addicted. And his life went here and my life went there. But we reconnected a couple years ago and we get on the phone a couple times a month and it would never stop. I know it would never stop. We still have it, but we had it at 20. And so I have to count him as like, I could tell him what I was dealing with. I have to go to the opposite for a minute. I had a friend a long time ago and something really bothered me. And when, again, the content, she'd call me and she wanted the news. How's this? Have you done this? How's the job? Da-da-da-da-da-da. And then she got the news and she was done. And I'd get off the phone and I'd feel so sad. It made me feel unseen. And I'm also remembering being in college and being depressed and calling my parents. And if my dad answered the phone, he'd go, "Are you taking classes? Yeah. Does your car run? Yeah. You got enough food to eat? Yeah. You got a place to live? Yeah. Well, then what could possibly be wrong with you?" You take these versions into today's world and it's lonely.
One of the reasons why when one's default in responding to somebody is the fix, that's what they're going to typically feel like is you're not hearing them or seeing them. You mean well, I hope, I mean, let's be honest. If you have a friend who's been struggling for 14 years and it's going to be the same conversation over and they're never trying to get help, I get it. I get why you'd be like, but did you go to the therapist? I get it. I'm not trying to simplify, but, and the thing that I think about is whether they're a fixer and there's other things that get in the way, right? That people do. I feel like God is one of the reasons why they do that also because they just don't know what else to say, which then makes me think, God, there's so much to say. You could say there's just a million places you could go. And that's what you're choosing. Okay. But boy, oh boy, like, wouldn't it be cool if you just sort of like, we'll get back to the curious thing or whatever, like, and the irony, of course, is when you meet people like that, and then you do ultimately suggest a solution, they might even be more open to hearing it. Maybe. Or you might have more information to give them an informed information.
Well, and people have their timing. Some people are very slow to open up.
Right.
Okay. And again, I hate to keep bringing this up, but I go back when you're 20, it's likely you don't know how to say what you want or what's missing or why this doesn't feel good to you. I would know today if I met, I can meet people today and I just know that I'm seeing a pile of limitations and that's not going to work for me. I'll go on to somebody else. But when you're young and maybe somebody's really attractive or they're a shiny penny in the room or whatever you're choosing, your choice of choosing, it's harder to know how to put out there what you want. I think I spent a lot more time young putting up with people that were not good for me. And there's something about aging where you just go, nah, I'm kind of done with this. This isn't worth my time. I don't have a lot of time left.
You got to be careful, though. I mean, I'm speaking of me when you do that so much that there's almost no one around.
Right. No, I'm not talking about, and I'm not a ghoster or a verbally active, get rid of this one. I just sort of move a little bit away and spend more time over here. Well, I know we've traversed a number of areas, but again, I think that's why you're so good at this. Because you're curious and this is what you do. I mean, what is a more layered question than why do you want to end your life? I mean, it doesn't get much more layered than that. So good for you.
Well, thank you. Well, and I obviously need people like you to feel comfortable talking with me and then joining me and then blah, blah, blah. So yeah, thanks. What else would you like to share?
I'm feeling a need to want to reach out to all these young people as an older person with this, but I don't want to say or do anything that could possibly feel invalidating or the arrogance of the old, or any of that. I don't know more, but I've lived longer. And so I've seen a lot. And I've seen a lot of people take their lives. I know a lot of people who've taken their lives. I would have no way of telling you whether they would have regretted it. Can't know. But I think it's important for the people they leave behind to get to a place of understanding the kind of pain that they were in and how they had to do this. It's very sad to miss them. For us, for who's left. It's also very sad to live with this day to day. I just sort of put my hands out to all your callers. I have no magic words, no magic advice.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. Just, I put my hands out to them and I just want them to know that I get it.
And we're not saving everyone. We're not going to save everybody. And that's not even really the goal, I suppose. But one of the things we can do, I really believe, but I don't know if I have proof of this. So it's sort of just like, okay, Sean, whatever, is if you let people have agency, watch the suicide numbers go down. Now, I could be wrong because there might be a lot of people that are like, I'm checking out. And I don't know, I don't know. And I don't mean on every corner there's a go kill yourself capsule at all. And I don't know how that would be administered. It's going to get very complicated. And then other people are involved, taking your agency away. There's no easy answer here. But just the idea of it. Again, if you start a conversation with the understanding that ultimately they can and probably will do what they want. If you give them that latitude, that space, That will be far more like, it's just a better conversation.
Absolutely.
That
Absolutely.
doesn't mean you're encouraging it.
No.
You're just meeting somebody where they are.
I mean, I agree with you. My phraseology would be someone came to me, I would say, tell me what hurt.
That's nice. And then you let them tell you.
Yeah.
And if you start doing all that other stuff, guess what they're going to not do again? Tell you. So there's simple ways, well, simple might be not the fair word, to help them continue telling you or to stop them from doing that. Which direction do you want to go? I would prefer to have them keep telling me.
Yeah.
If I had a 15-year-old son, maybe I would be freaking out. I'm not pretending that I wouldn't be. I'm not in that situation. I know there's a lot of things going on there that are at play, of course. But maybe just start small with a friend who's struggling, something where it's not as charged. Get a little practice.
I think a change in me also is that I've been around long enough to know that life changes. You feel stuck and it feels like this is always going to be who I am, where I am, whatever. I'm here to say again, anything can happen. Maybe not anything, but something will happen. You don't always see it coming. Change happens. And for some people, that's not enough. That's not good enough. And I get it. But I really have seen how things change. I am not who I was in my 30s. A lot of me. Some of me is, but a lot of me, and being stuck is horrible. And I can just say that something will happen. Hard to take in when you're stuck, but I've been stuck.
But if you're stuck for a long time, and maybe you could be unstuck, but you do something that you probably ain't coming back from. This is why the pink and purple pill is a little dangerous, because it's there. It's easy to take.
Well, it's kind of like the assumption that death will be an absence of pain. And we don't know that. This is attributed to Robin Williams. I don't know if he said it, but be kind. You never know what somebody's going through.
Yeah.
And if you can bring that to the world, however you are, and you're not writing a congressman or marching, but you're bringing kindness. And that's really what matters. And I did all that in the 60s, very politically active. I'm tired now. I'm appalled now. I hope that the people coming up who are going to have this world longer than me will do that. So, but it's very distressing.
By the way, I think it was Robin Williams, perhaps, it doesn't really matter, who also said something like, people don't fake depression, they fake being happy.
His loss really hurt. I wish he had been in my life as just a person.
I wish he were my therapist in Good Will Hunting. I've been through a handful of therapists, and I'm like, okay, I'll do this for a little while, but like,
well, I'm tired of my story. When you sit down with a new therapist.
I know.
Okay, well, gee, and you hit your story. Yeah, there is an author. I don't know if you would enjoy this or not, but his name is Irwin Yalom. I think it is. I can look it up. I wish he could have been my therapist. And he's probably in his 80s now. And whenever I've read one of his books, I wished he could have been my therapist. The Robin Williams character was fictional, but this guy is real. And he's probably one of the few therapists that's ever impressed me. There's also Edmund Schneidman, and he was the suicide guy. He was the guy who wrote the textbook books on suicidology. I think he coined the phrase suicidology. He died a few years ago. And I was actually in a workshop with him once. He seemed like a good guy, but I haven't fully read his work. He may have had something to do with starting the suicide prevention movement, which I don't know if the way it is today is the way he intended. I don't want to assume he's not a good guy because of that.
Yeah.
But he seemed like a good guy. I'm not sure. But anyway, I hope to talk with you again.
Yes. And I hope for you that there's no additional suffering, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that would be nice. One thing I'm going to add, I've gotten better at ducking faster when I see a trigger coming. I can read a person or a situation and go, that wouldn't be good for me. I'm not going to do that. that's kind of my way of helping with the suffering issue, the avoidance of certain things, choosing what to avoid.
But not me.
Again, thank you.
You're welcome. I appreciate your time and talking again. It was great. Bye.
Bye.
As always, thanks so much for listening and all of your support. Special thanks to R in California for talking again. Thanks, R. If you are a suicide attempt survivor or ideator and you'd like to talk, I'd love to talk with you. Please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com. You can check our website, suicidenoted.com, and find some information in other places. If you'd like to learn more about this podcast, as well as the tour, ways you can get involved or participate. But hey, if your thing is to listen once in a while, maybe every week, that's awesome too. I really appreciate it. And that is all for this week's update episode. Stay strong. Do the best you can. I'll talk to you soon.